Hello doctors, welcome back to Pirates of Medicine. Today we are back with the second video in the path morphology based solution series. Before we start, please subscribe to the channel, and if you have already, let's begin. The 21st question is that autopsy revealed a large wedge-shaped patch of dense dark red tissue with clear margins on the upper lobe of the lung. Histological examination detected their necrosis of the alveolar walls. The alveolar lumen is tightly packed with RBCs or erythrocytes. What process has occurred in the lungs? Now, this is a classical morphology of infarction of the lung. Infarction is the vascular ischemic necrosis caused by occlusion of the arterial supply or the venous drainage in a particular tissue. So if the blood supply for a particular organ is blocked, either due to occlusion of the artery or the compression of the artery, it leads to infarction of that tissue. On the basis of color, infarction can be three. Classically, in white infarction is seen in spleen, as seen in this photo. White with hemorrhagic red rim is classical for myocardial infarction. Hemorrhagic red colored infarction is seen in infarction of lungs and intestine. As you can see in this photo, this wedge shaped red hemorrhagic infarct in the pulmonary tissue shows pulmonary infarction, which is red in color, which is in accordance with the question. Let's go to the 22nd. The 22nd question is that a 23-year-old man developed perforation in his heart palate. A dense formation with clear margins was detected in this area. After a surgery, microscopy of the excised formation showed there a large focus of caseous necrosis surrounded with the granulation tissue with endovasculitis and cellular infiltrate consisting of lymphocytes, epithelioid cells, predominance of plasma cells. What is the most likely disease in this case? So before we go to the disease, we need to understand what a granuloma is. So granuloma is a specific pathomorphological structure which consists of an aggregation of inflammatory mononuclear cells, modified macrophages called as epithelioid cells, and lymphocytes in the periphery. So this is a basic structure of granuloma. So now specific diseases can have specific granulomas. For example, first of all, we have tuberculosis. In tuberculosis granuloma, there is a central area of caseous necrosis. This area is surrounded by multiple Langerhans giant cells, which are modified macrophages, epithelioid cells, and lymphocytes. Now, if you want to stain this granuloma, you can identify the Mycobacterium tuberculosis using Ziehl-Neelsen stain, which are present in the macrophages. So then we have syphilitic granuloma, which has a specific name called as gumma. Now syphilitic granuloma is a basic specific granuloma which is different with the presence of many plasmocytes in it. So as you can see, a focus of necrosis surrounded by infiltrate of cells with lymphocytes, now plasmocytes and epithelioid cells. So plasmocytes is different, but another characteristic of syphilitic granuloma is presence of endovasculitis. What is endovasculitis? The blood vessels surrounding this granuloma, their endothelium proliferates, causing endovasculitis, which is seen near the necrotic foci. Then we have rhinoscleroma granuloma, which has characteristic Mikulicz cells present and Russell bodies present. And we have lepromatous granuloma, which has characteristic Virchow cells present. Virchow cells are nothing but necrotic large cells filled with Mycobacterium leprae and lipid. So in the question you can see that the caseous necrosis foci was surrounded with granulation tissue with endovasculitis and cellular infiltrate with lymphocytes, epithelioid cell, but predominant of plasma cells. So this is syphilitic gumma. 23 question is that a patient has gradually developed a skin plaque on his face. In the center of this plaque, there are a necrotic patch and an ulcer. Histopathological analysis of the biopsy material reveals proliferation of atypical epithelial cells with a large number of pathologic mitosis. What is the most likely diagnosis? So you need to understand they are giving some hints over here. First of all, the skin plaque, then a necrotic patch and ulcer, and also most importantly, proliferation of atypical epithelial cells. Now, whenever you see atypical epithelial cells written in croc questions, they are trying to hint that there is malignancy present in this particular tissue. So, and also pathological mitosis. So this malignancy is present on the skin cells, the epithelial cells. This is skin cancer. Now, skin cancer can be of many types depending on which cells of the skin are involved. The squamous cells are involved. We have squamous cell carcinoma. We have basal cell carcinoma if the basal cells of the basal layer are involved. And if the melanin secreting cells are involved, we have melanoma, melanocytes. cancer of melanocytes. So let's go to the next one. 24th is that histological analysis of biopsy skin sample obtained from a 24-year-old patient detects caseous necrosis surrounded with cellular infiltrate consisting of lymphocytes, among which there is single giant cells, proliferation of CT, and endovasculitis are observed. We just talked about this. This is actually a granuloma which is specific to a disease called as syphilis, and this also is known as syphilitic gumma. And you can see they're not asking even specific. This is just proliferative granulomatous inflammation. So I think you are able to understand this and you would be able to answer this question. So 25th is again autopsy of a man who had been suffering from mitral stenosis revealed dense brown lungs. What pathological process had occurred in the lungs? Now, as you can see that there are certain hemoglobinogenic pigment disturbances. Among that, the most important is hemosiderosis. Hemosiderosis is the accumulation of a blood pigment called as hemosiderin. Now, this hemosiderin accumulation can be general or it can be local. If it is general, the general one occurs because of intravascular hemolysis. Intravascular hemolysis leads to accumulation of hemosiderin in the blood cells like monocyte macrophages, histocytes, endothelial epithelial cells of the liver. If the intravascular hemolysis is occurring in that organ. If the hemolysis occurs extravascularly, then it is the hemosiderin is accumulated in the foci where the hemorrhage has occurred. Now, a classical example of hemosiderosis is brown induration of lung. So, brown induration of lungs is when the lung tissue gets accumulated with hemosiderin and which leads to dense enlargement of this pulmonary tissue, and a classical brown rusty brown color is seen. And this, as you can see, this is which is supposed to be pale pink. Now this is brownish in color. This is the cross section of the pulmonary tissue or the lung, and therefore this is hemosiderosis or the brown induration of lung, which is in accordance with the question over here. So 26th is that a 63-year-old man who had been suffering from chronic diffuse obstructive pulmonary emphysema for 15 years died of progressive heart failure. Autopsy shows nutmeg liver cirrhosis, cyanotic induration of kidneys and spleen, ascites, edemas of lower limbs. What type of heart failure can be characterized by the changes in the internal organ? Now, as you can see, that chronic heart failure, or otherwise known as chronic congestive heart failure, or generally known as heart failure, is the inability of the heart to maintain enough blood supply throughout the body over a long period of time. Now, if this inability of the heart develops over a long period of time, this is called as chronic heart failure. The chronic heart failure, because of its chronic phase, has certain characteristic morphological peculiarity in some of the organs. For example, in the liver, the characteristic appearance seen is nutmeg liver. Now, due to chronic passive congestion of the liver secondary to the chronic heart failure, the liver appears to be like a nutmeg kernel. As you can see, this is a nutmeg, and if you cut it, the cross section of the nutmeg just look like this nutmeg liver appearance. Other than that, the spleen is large and bluish red in color. The capsule of the spleen is tense and pulp is soft, and this is called as cyanotic induration of the spleen. Similar thing is seen in the kidney, and most importantly, if you know, the most classical finding in a patient with chronic heart failure is edema of the lower extremities. So if you press the lower limbs of these patients, you can see formation of pitting edemas. So this is classically seen in chronic heart failure. That is why the answer here is chronic heart failure, because you have nutmeg liver and all the other classical morphological symptoms. 27th is that a 6-year-old girl present with acute onset of a disease. She developed sore throat with high temperature that were later accompanied with punctuate skin rash. Oral exam reveals acute pharyngeal hyperemia, raspberry tongue, and enlarged bright red tonsils with dull gray yellow foci that spread to the peritonsillar tissues. The submandibular lymph nodes are also enlarged. What disease are these characteristic of? So all these pathomorphological symptoms are actually in accordance with the disease called as scarlet fever. Scarlet fever is a disease caused by streptococcal bacteria. It is a form of strep infection. Now, there are certain classical characteristic things which are seen in symptoms which are seen in scarlet fever, which include in the first period of the changes, There is acute plethora or the burning faucets will be written in your question, or flaming pharynx it can also be said as, which involves the inflammation of the oral cavity and the pharynx. Also, the tongue is raspberry colored, you can see, and the tonsils are enlarged and they are bright red and juicy. So then we can have this punctuate rash, seen you can see in this picture. And if the disease progresses, the kidneys can get involved, causing glomerulonephritis and nephrosclerosis. The bacteria can invade the endothelium of the heart, causing endocarditis. Sorry, not endothelium, endocardium of the heart, causing endocarditis. And it can also like invade the blood vessels, causing vasculitis. So this is scarlet fever. 28th is that autopsy of a man who served on a nuclear submarine revealed the following pathologies: bone marrow atrophy, anemia, leukopenia, thrombocytopenia, lymphocytic disintegration in the lymph nodes, spleen, GIT, lymphatic system, and hemorrhages into the adrenal glands. What disease had developed in this case? So if you can see, the man had a background of working in a nuclear submarine, so he's probably been introduced or has been affected with radiation. So radiation over a period of time, short period of time, leads to acute radiation syndrome. So acute radiation syndrome is just the radiation sickness, which is due to being exposed to high amounts of radiation over a short period of time. And the amount of dose in gray can depict or can tell you how much damage has been done to the body. So, for example, if the dose, ionization radiation dose that the patient or the person has taken on his body is from 1 to 2, then the classical symptoms seen are nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. Now, as the dose increases, there appear hematopoietic cyst syndrome, GIT syndrome, central nervous system syndrome, and various other symptoms are seen. For example, in hematopoietic syndrome, the bone marrow stem cells are destroyed. So all the blood cells level will decrease gradually. In GIT system, the intestinal mucosa is destroyed. So diarrhea and other dehydration syndrome is seen. In central nervous system, the brain structure, the neurons and the brain is destroyed, which leads to convulsions, irritability, coma, and even death. So this is acute radiation syndrome. 9-month-old child present with delayed eruption of tooth, improper sequence of tooth eruption, and horizontal maxillary configuration. Microscopically, enamel mineralization pattern is irregular. Enamel columns are wrinkled. Some of them are vacuolated. Predentine zones are widened, and single denticles can be observed. We can overall see that the tooth formation process is totally disturbed in this patient, and this at this particular age is in accordance with a disease called as rickets. Rickets is the deficiency of vitamin D, and due to vitamin D deficiency in this patient, you see delayed eruption of tooth and all the symptoms related to tooth formation disturbance. The other classical symptoms seen in vitamin D deficiency or rickets are as follows: delayed closure of the fontanelles of the head, the frontal glossing. You can see we just saw dental hypoplasia. There is a pectus carneatum, a congenital defect can be seen. We can see swelling of wrist and ankle joints, bowing of legs is classical example. We can see this Harrison sulcus present over here, craniotapes, wide sutures between the cranial bone, etc. 30th question is that autopsy of a 58-year-old man who for a long time had been drinking alcohol in large amounts died at home is being conducted. Macroscopically, what is observed is that the right lung is dense and enlarged. Its tissue is gray and homogeneous on section. Its pleura is covered with grayish membranous deposits. Microscopically, the alveolar cavities contain fibrin threads, neutrophil, and hemolyzed erythrocytes. Make the diagnosis. So actually, all these pathomorphological symptoms are in accordance with a disease called as Croup pneumonia. Now, Croup pneumonia can also be called as lobar pneumonia, fibrinous pneumonia, parenchymatous pneumonia, or lung fever. It is an acute infectious or allergic lung disease. Now, the morphology of Croup pneumonia can be divided into certain stages, with the first stage being the stage of congestion. So, congestion stage or the initial phase, it is characterized by severe hyperemia and edema of the affected lobe of the lung. So generally lasts for 12 to 2 days. The lung is indurated and sharply plethoric. Then we have the stage of red hepatization. Now, why it is called hepatization? Because actually the the lung appears to be like a liver, and what I mean by that, you will just see that the erythrocytes from the vessels, they diapidize into the lung tissue. The neutrophils come into the lung tissue, and fibrin fibers are accumulated, which makes the lung appear dark red, which and acquires the density of the liver. So this is why this is called as red hepatization of the lung. As you can see, this is the stage of congestion. The capillaries edema cause congestion, alveoli are filled with fluid, and here in the stage of red hepatization, RBCs, bacteria and few neutrophils, they enter the alveolar spaces causing red hepatization. Now after red hepatization comes gray hepatization. In this what occurs is that the erythrocytes which have come into the alveoli, they undergo hemolysis, their number decreases, but the intensity of hyperemia decreases. But the fibrin films that have come into the alveoli and the surrounding pleural structure, they continue to be there. So the density of the lung increases, it becomes heavy, and there this is why this is called as late consolidation or the stage of gray hepatization. Neutrophils are classically seen in this stage, which gives it a gray color. Then we have the stage of completion called as resolution stage, and in this stage fibrinous exudate, it is melted under the action of proteolytic enzymes of the neutrophils and undergoes resorption. So the exudate is eliminated from the body from the lungs by the lymphatic drainage of the lung and the phlegm. And the fibrinous overlays of the pleura that came in the stage of gray hepatization, they also resolve. So this are in accordance with the patient over here. Lung being dense and enlarged, tissue being gray and homogeneous on section, grayish membrane deposits, alveolar cavities contain fibrin, neutrophils, and hemolyzed erythrocytes. This is Grupus pneumonia. 31st is that autopsy of a 49-year-old woman who died of chronic kidney failure shows small, dense, striated kidneys with areas of hemorrhages. Microscopically, nuclei of epithelial channels contain hematoxylin bodies. Glomerular capillaries resemble wire loops. Basement membrane is thickened, and in places it contains hyaline thrombi, foci of fibrinoid necrosis. What is the most likely diagnosis? So again, with the theme of pathomorphology, these are the classic symptoms seen in systemic lupus erythematosus. SLE is, or also called as Libman-Sachs disease, is either acute or chronic disease, which depends on the etiology, and it is a disease which involves the connective tissue, and it is actually an autoimmune disease. So it involves the skins, the vessels, and classically the kidneys, and the morphological characteristics of SLE are as follows. So first of all, you can see acute necrotic changes of the connective tissue, because we just told that it involves connective tissue changes. Okay, other than that, we have the interstitial inflammation of organs, because you should know that the interstitial part of all organs is made up of connective tissue. So obviously, if connective tissue is undergoing degeneration, then the interstitial parts of the organ will be inflamed. Then we have changes of sclerotic character. For example, this classical onion-like sclerosis which is seen in spleen. Other than that, we have the accumulation of hematoxylin bodies. Hematoxylin bodies are nothing but after the death of cells, the nucleus disintegrates into small granules which are called as hematoxylin bodies. And these neutrophils and macrophages surrounding these cells, they eat up these hematoxylin bodies, and now these are called as lupus cells or LE cells. Okay, if the lupus SLE, it involves kidney, then this special condition is called as lupus nephritis. In lupus nephritis, we see certain classical morphological features in the kidney, which include presence of hematoxylin bodies. The glomeruli membranes, the capillary membranes of the glomeruli are thickened and they form wire loops. And also they can have hyaline thrombi. There can be foci of fibrinoid necrosis present, and you can see immune complex fixation in the basement membrane of the glomeruli. Okay, also this classical butterfly rash on the face is in accordance with SLE. So I hope it clears your question, and let's go to the next one. So 32 is that a 34-year-old man died of comatose state. According to his family, after a business trip to an African country, he developed jaundice attacks. Autopsy showed following: dense enlarged spleen with slate black pulp, enlarged plethoric liver, grey black on section, cerebral grey matter is brown grey, cerebral white matter is contains numerous small hemorrhages. What infectious disease can be suspected? You need to understand that this man, first of all, has a background or anamnesis of traveling to an African country, and there are periodical jaundice attacks. Now, again, keeping into pathomorphology, this is the pathomorphology of a malaria. Now, malaria, malaria is a disease caused by Plasmodium falciparum or Plasmodium vivax or ovale, basically Plasmodium species. Now, what is the morphology of the morphological symptoms that occur during malaria? In malaria, because of erythrocyte hemolysis, you have a classical formation of hemomelanin. So this hemomelanin is a pigment formed from hemoglobin due to Plasmodium. This gets accumulated in various parts of the organ, causing this black, dark gray pigmentation of these organs. For example, in the liver, in the spleen, and in the lymph nodes and in the bone marrow, they become dark gray and black because of accumulation of this hemomelanin. Other than that, the in malignant cerebral malaria, which involves the CNS, we have classical symptoms like ring hemorrhages present in the brain. The dots of hemozoin pigments are seen, for example, over here. So this is classical morphology of malaria, pathomorphology of malaria. So I hope it answers your question. Let's go to the next one. 33 is that a 27-year-old woman has undergone a sector resection of a mammary gland tissue. Microscopy detects a dense white node 4 cm in diameter with clear margins in the excised tissue. Immediate histological analysis shows the tumor to consist of a large amount of fibrous stroma with stromal proliferation around the small caniculi. Canicular epithelium overlays the basement membrane and retains its polarity. You need to make a diagnosis. So if you have been following our Instagram, this was one of our first post. This is actually breast pericanicular fibroadenoma. Now, fibroadenomas are actually benign breast tumors which are characterized by admixture of stromal and epithelial tissues. Morphologically, if this growth pattern is occurring around the caniculi of the breast, this is pericanicular. If it is occurring into the compressing the caniculi and compressing the epithelial structure, this is intracanalicular. So we talk about breast pericanalicular fibroadenoma. It is a morphological variant of fibroadenoma of the breast without any clinical significance, but it is characterized by the circumferential proliferation of the stromal cells around the ducts. So circumferential pericanalicular fibroadenoma, in this, the proliferation of the stromal cells is around the breast canaliculi. So this results in formation of ductal epithelial structures which are rounded in shape. This is seen in our patient. Fibrostroma proliferation around the small canaliculi, so pericanalicular fibroadenoma. 34th is that in the course of urgent surgery, the vermiform appendix of a patient was excised. The appendix was actually distended and grey-black throughout its whole length. In the distal segment defect, the appendix wall was detected, through which a foul-smelling grey-brown substance was being discharged from the appendix lumen. Histological analysis show necrotization of the appendix wall with hemorrhagic foci. Lumen of the mesenteric artery is filled with a thrombus. What type of appendicitis it is? They have already given you a diagnosis of appendicitis. You need to tell what pathomorphological variant of appendicitis it is. And appendicitis, is inflammation of the vermiform appendix. And it can be simple acute. It can be suppurative, which means pus containing. It can be phlegmonous, with the same name, or it can be gangrenous. Basically, the first two, the simple and suppurative, can actually be can be regarded as different degree of one type, because first occurs simple acute and then occurs phlegmonous or suppurative. And in this, you can see the appendix being swollen, tense, congested. Small fibrin can be seen on the surface, and purulent material may exude from this appendix. Pus will be the exudate. And necrosis and general suppuration is seen in the suppurative or phlegmonous stage. As the more pus will be formed, the stage will go to suppurative. Now, gangrenous appendicitis is different because in this, gangrene will affect the distal portion of the appendix. The gangrene formation of the appendix leads to necrotization of the appendix wall, and various small hemorrhagic foci are seen in the appendix. Now, this mainly leads to due to thrombosis of the veins in the mesoappendix, which leads to hemorrhage, and these several hemorrhagic foci are formed. In the patient, you can see that there is gray brown substance being discharged from the appendix lumen. There are hemorrhagic foci. There is thrombus in the mesenteric arteries filled with the thrombus. Acute gangrenous appendicitis is the diagnosis. 35th, a 39-year-old man underwent a surgery for peptic ulcer of the stomach. He died 7 days after the surgery. On autopsy, the peritoneal layers are plethoric, dull, and covered with massive yellow-green membranous deposits. The peritoneal cavity contains 300 milliliter of thick yellow-green fluid. What pathological process was detected in the peritoneal cavity? So, peritonitis is the inflammation of the peritoneal cavity, can be acute and chronic. Acute peritonitis is actually seen or caused by extension of inflammatory processes in the abdominal cavity after perforation of the gut. So the inflammatory processes which are present in the gut after perforation, after the ulcers or the wall of the GIT is perforated, they move on onto the peritoneal cavity, causing peritonitis. So on the basis of the type of inflammation involved, peritonitis, acute peritonitis can be serous, purulent, fibropurulent, serofibrinous, purulent hemorrhagic, and fibrohemorrhagic. In serous fluid is present in peritoneum. In purulent, pus is present in peritoneum. In fibropurulent, fibrin and pus is present. In serofibrinous, I think you understand, serous fluid and fibers are present. In the patient over here, you can see this massive yellow-green membrane deposit, which indicate that fibrin deposition is present, and there is 300 milliliter of thick yellow fluid, green fluid in the peritoneal cavity, which shows that pus is present. This is fibrinopurulent peritonitis. I hope you understand. Let's go to the 36th. 36th is that multiple oval ulcers along the intestines were revealed on autopsy of the person who died from diffuse peritonitis in the distal part of small intestine. Bottom parts of the ulcer are clear, smooth, formed with muscular serous covering. Edges of the ulcer are flat, rounded. Their perforation up to 0.5 centimeter in diameter in two ulcers. What disease can be diagnosed? Now, if you remember our first video, we talk about typhoid fever. So the symptoms in the question are in accordance with typhoid fever. There are ulcer. This is the ulcer stage, and the ulcer stage, the ulcers have perforated, which I told you about. If the ulcer get perforated, all the content gets into the peritoneum, causing peritonitis, which is seen in this patient, and therefore this is diagnosis of typhoid fever. 37th question is that a patient suffering from thrombophlebitis of the deep vein suddenly died. Autopsy has shown freely lying red friable masses with dim crypt surface in the trunk and bifurcation of the pulmonary artery. What pathological process was revealed by the morbid anatomist? The thing is that these lying red friable masses are nothing but actually thromboemboli. So thrombophlebitis of the deep veins, this means that there is thrombus inflammation or thrombus producing inflammation of the deep veins, which leads to formation of a thromboemboli, which traveled up the blood clot or the thromboemboli. They travel through the vein to the lung, and in the lung it gets occluded in the pulmonary trunk, causing thromboembolism of pulmonary trunk. The pulmonary trunk is the most common site of where you can find these emboli. So if you have thrombophlebitis or DVTs of the lower limbs, then the clot can move through the veins and get occluded, or can occlude the pulmonary trunk, causing thromboembolism of the pulmonary trunk. 38th is that examination of a patient revealed dense movable skin tumor that is standing out distinctly from the surrounding tissues. Its section is found to be white and composed of fibrous tissue. Microscopic exam revealed interlacing collagen fibers and few cells. What tumor it is? So basically, you can see that there is no mention of malignancy, there is no mention of atypical cells, there is no mention of pathological mitosis. So this shows that this is a benign tumor. So we have certain benign mesenchymal tumors. Now, first of all, we have the fibroma. So fibroma is the benign tumor that develops from connective tissue. So the benign tumor of connective tissue, fibroma. Now, you can see the fibroma can be dense and hard depending on if the fibrous structures are more, or the cellular elements like the fibrocytes or fibroblasts are more as compared to the fibers. So more fibers means dense or hard. If less fibers and more cellular elements, soft fibroma. Okay, so you can see here you have fibroma in the upper eyelid, and you can see in this photo that there are these connective fibers prevailing in between these cells. So this is histology of fibroma, and in the question you can see the section of the tumor is found to be white and composed of fibrous tissue. So this is fibroma. Simple. Also, desmoid is a special type of fibroma which is seen in the anterior abdominal wall. In the picture you can see this desmoid. 39th is that a 50-year-old man has felt vague abdominal discomfort within the past 4 months. Physical exam revealed no lymphadenopathy, no abdominal masses or organomegaly or palpation. Bowel sounds are heard. An abdominal CT scan showed a 20 centimeter retroperitoneal soft tissue mass obscuring the left psoas muscle. A stool specimen tested ocular blood is negative. Which of the following neoplasms is the man most likely to have? Now, as you can see, there is no other disorder. There is no lymphadenopathy. The lymph nodes are not, there is no pathology in the lymph nodes. There are no abdominal masses. The organs of the abdomen are not increased in size. The bowel sounds are normal. But the abdominal CT revealed this 20 centimeter retroperitoneal soft mass. We need to understand that in the retroperitoneum, there is a fat capsule which surrounds the kidney between the left psoas muscle, and this fat capsule surrounding the kidney often leads to formation of a benign tumor of lipids called as lipoma. So as we talked about fibroma, lipoma is again a benign mesenchymal tumor and which develops from the fat tissue. It looks like a node. It consists of fat lobules of irregular shape and different sizes. The most lipomas are mobile, they slowly enlarge and they are painless. And intramuscular infiltrating lipoma is a tumor without distinct borders. It invades into the intermuscular connective tissue, which actually was seen in our patient in the previous question. As you can see in this question, plantar lipoma surgically is excised from the from the hand, and this removal of not plantar, palmar excision of the lipoma, and here you can see the lipoma which is excised from this patient. 40th question is that a 40-year-old woman had feelings of abdominal discomfort over the past 8 months. On pelvic exam, there is right adhaxial mass. Abdominal CT scan demonstrate a 7 centimeter cystic mass involving the right ovary with small areas of calcification. The uterus is normal in size. The right fallopian tube and the ovary have been removed surgically. Grossly, the mass on section is filled with abundant hair and sebum. Microscopically, the mass has glandular spaces lined by columnar epithelium, squamous epithelium with hair follicles, cartilage, and dense connective tissue. So what type of tumor this is? So basically, this is a special type of tumor called as teratoma. Teratoma are the germ cells tumors. So in teratoma, you will see that if you see a teratoma, the teratoma has all 3 germ layers present. so, or more than one germ layer present. So teratoma, in teratoma you can classically see like these very absurd things. For example, if you excise a teratoma, there can be teeth present inside the teratoma. There can be hair present. For example, in this you can see hair, and here you can see teeth. And so this is teratoma. Now teratoma are most classically formed in ovary and testicle and coccyx, and even in the coccyx bone. And the teratomas are actually non-seminotomatous germ cells tumor. They they occur due to abnormal development of the pluripotent germ cells or the embryonal cells. Most commonly they are seen in the sacrococcygeal parts. They are also seen in gonads, and other common locations are as follows. Now, I hope that this was easy for you to understand. This is all for today. I hope this video was helpful for you. If you found it helpful, please consider subscribing to the channel and sharing this video with your friend. And also comment down below so that we know that we are helping someone. So anyway, this has been good. See you in the next one.